Hello friends, this video on Principles of Inheritance Part 40 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Now in this section we are going to talk about the genetic disorders. Now as I said, there can be mutations when the structure of the gene changes or when the number of chromosome changes or when the structure of chromosome changes. Now, as I said, mutations are not necessarily harmful always, but at the same time, not always mutations are useful as well. So sometimes these kind of changes can actually bring about disorders in an organism or an individual. So this is what we are going to talk about here, where we will see what are the various genetic disorders, what are the various disorders that can happen in an individual that happens due to genetics or that comes in that individual genetically. Now, when I say genetic disorders, it is a problem or a disease that is present from birth due to genetic abnormalities. Now, not all disorder is a disease. It is not necessary that something which is a disorder is a disease. A disorder can be something which is not a disease. You are not suffering from that disease, but it is just a problem. It is not normal. It is a little different from what is normal, but it is a kind of problem. Right? So that is the literal meaning of disorder. But when you say disease is which you are all aware of, right? So when you are actually suffering from a disease and it can be fatal, or even if it is not fatal. So disorder and disease literally they are not exactly the same. But when we define genetic disorder, so some of the disorders can be a disease, some of them can just be a disorder or just a problem, but it is not actually threatening your life. It is there, but still you are able to do everything with that. So now any such problem which exists from birth due to genetic abnormalities. Now it doesn't happen due to any of the external factors. It happens because of some issue with the gene. So maybe during the process of this entire cell division, you see so many complicated things take place during the course of this process. Like so many times DNA replicates, so many times it happens that the sister chromatids separate, so many times the homologous chromosomes, they pair up, they recombine again, they separate. So many small things take place during this entire event. So there is always a possibility of an error at any of these steps. So whenever you have error in all these processes, so that is out of your scope, right? You will not know what's happening inside your body. But sometimes it is a natural process because of which there might be some genetic abnormalities. So as a result of which the baby which is born, since the time of birth, it will have some problems due to those genetic abnormalities, and they are known as genetic disorders. Now, hope you understand why it is so important to study about genetic disorders, because this is something which is not in our hands. We cannot control the way cell division is taking place, the way DNA is duplicating itself. So we cannot control all these errors. But what we can do is we can try to prevent genetic disorders. How? By studying about them. Now, if we know that, okay, so by now we already know that if we know the genetic makeup of both the parents, we can actually predict what kind of offsprings can be produced by this couple. Right? So wherever we feel that, okay, there is a possibility that this couple might give birth to a kid who might have a genetic disorder, then maybe some preventive measures can be taken. Right? So that is the purpose of studying about the genetic disorders. So these kind of disorders keep on passing, they keep on going from one generation to the next. So let us suppose this is generation 1, this is generation 2, their kids. So this couple, they gave birth to say 2 boys. So they are their kids and both of them get married. And then again these are their kids. So this is generation 3. So here again they give birth to a boy and they give birth to a girl. Now they again get married and then again this is generation 4. But still you see that something which was present here might get carried till here. So let us talk about the various genetic disorders. Now in order to study how the genetic disorders get inherited, there is a technique which is known as pedigree analysis. So this is a very simple technique which makes this study of inheritance of disorders very easy, because it is not very simple to understand it manually, right? Because we cannot experiment with human beings. So let us see what is pedigree analysis. It is a technique to study the inheritance of traits over several generations in a family. So you actually prepare a family tree kind of a structure where you see that how the traits are being inherited or how the traits are being passed on from one generation to the other. Now, if you actually try to look at a family tree, it is not that simple. It is going to be a very complex structure. So first a couple, then their kids, then they get married, they form couple, then their kids. So the tree keeps on expanding, right? So if you want to study the inheritance of traits, you actually need a very smart technique so that you can do it very efficiently. And for that purpose was introduced this pedigree analysis. Now the question is, why do we do this analysis? Why is it so important to have a technique just to study the inheritance of traits over generations? We can just try to do it in a manual way. So let us try to see why is it important to have pedigree analysis to understand traits over several generations. So let us try to understand why do we use or why is pedigree analysis required? To determine the possibility of an offspring with a genetic disorder. So as I said, if you study the way the traits are being inherited from one generation to the next in a family, it becomes easier to track if there is a possibility of genetic disorder in an offspring. So if you know it beforehand, some preventive measures can be taken. So that is one advantage. Controlled crosses are not possible. Well, in case of human beings, we cannot perform controlled crosses. So what do we mean by controlled cross? Well, controlled cross is crossing of two individuals of desired traits. Now in human beings that doesn't happen, right? We cannot use human beings for experimentation purpose, like how the pea plant was used or how the fruit fly was used. So that is little difficult in case of human beings. So we cannot deliberately breed two individuals to produce an offspring, and that too we cannot choose desirable genetic characters to be crossed to produce offsprings just for experimentation purpose. So controlled crosses are a little difficult. So that for that reason also we have a pedigree analysis, so that we can prepare an analysis chart and we can forecast the possibility of inheritance of traits to the next generation. Human beings produce fewer children. Now in real life, the number of children in case of human beings, it starts with one. Many of the families prefer only one children. Even if there are few families in rural areas where you will see that they have a lot of children, so even that number doesn't go beyond 10 or 15. In fact, 10 or 15 is on the maximum side. So with fewer children, you cannot actually conclude something, because with experimentation, you need to have more and more data. Only then you can reach a conclusion. But with lesser number of children, with lesser number of people in the entire chart, you just cannot reach to a conclusion. To understand the mode of inheritance. Now this is very, very important. Now when we prepare a pedigree analysis chart, we actually get to see that how the inheritance is actually taking place, how a specific trait is being passed on from one generation to the other generation. So that means also it helps to determine whether the trait is dominant or recessive. Now if you prepare a pedigree chart, you will be able to know the trait which is getting inherited, whether it is a dominant trait or a recessive trait. Now, how is it important to know this? Because if you know that the trait is a dominant trait, that means even if you get it from one of your parents, you will be affected with the disease. Let us suppose if a disease, let us suppose if the trait, if the gene which is carrying a particular disorder, if that is a dominant trait, that means even if you get it from one of your parents, you might be an affected individual. But if it is a recessive trait, in that case you will get the disorder only when you get it or when you inherit it from both your parents. Right? So that means it helps to know if the trait is a dominant or a recessive trait. So now let us talk about the technique. How exactly do we use this technique of pedigree analysis? Now before we actually talk about the technique, there are quite a few symbols which will be used in order to prepare the pedigree chart. So let us first look at the symbols. The specific symbols are used to prepare pedigree analysis charts. Let us look at the symbols. Now we often use a square for males. So the square is used to denote a male. A circle is used to denote a female. So here I have colored them just for your convenience. So wherever you see pink, you can relate it to a female. Wherever you see a blue, you can relate it to a male. So that is just for your convenient purpose. Otherwise, a plain square box is a male and a circle is a female. If you have a triangle like this, then this means that the sex is unspecified. So we do not know the sex of the individual, whether it is male or female. So if you have something marked in red, so if it is all red, that means these individuals, now this means a male, this means a female, this means the sex is unspecified. But if they are all bold red, that means that these individuals are affected. So they are affected with a disorder. If you have something like this, what is this? This is a male, this is a female, and you see a line joining both of them. So this means that there is mating happening between the male and the female. So this denotes mating between a male and a female. So you can say that this is the husband, this is the wife. When they get married, the possibility is they will mate. So this denotes the mating. What does this mean when you have double lines between the male and the female? Again, here this is male, this is female. So the double line, what does this indicate? This indicates that here also mating is happening because the lines connect them, but this shows that there is mating between relatives. So maybe the boy and the girl, they are cousin brothers and sisters. Maybe they are their own brothers or sisters. So they are relatives, so they belong to the same family, and then they are mating. So that makes a difference, right? Because if both the male and the female, they belong to the same family, so they already share some of their genetic characteristics. Now, when they both mate, then the result is going to be a little different than if two different individuals mate. Because when two different individuals mate, in that case, their genetic makeup is completely different because their families are not related to each other. Right? So, whenever you have a double line, that means the mating is happening between relatives who already belong to the same family. So what does this indicate? So this is a male, this is a female. This line shows that they are mating. Now when they mate, offsprings will be produced. So that is denoted by these lines. And what are the offsprings? The offsprings are, these are the children. So these denote the children. So this is a girl and this is a boy. So they are the parents. So these are the parents and these are the offsprings. Now in offspring also they are shown in the order. So from left, in the order of left to right, it shows in the order of their birth. So here it shows that the girl was born first and then the boy was born. So that means in that order it shows. So what does this show? This again shows that this is the male, this is the female, they get married and when they are mating and they give birth to a male. This is a male child, a boy who is affected. So here you see that the male child is affected. So here they give birth to an affected male child. What does this mean? So when you have just this box, that means that the sex is unspecified. But when you have this with a number inside, that means the 5 offsprings have been produced and the 5 offsprings are unaffected. Now we do not know whether the 5 offsprings, they are all male or they are all female, or some of them are males and some of them are females. We don't have that data, but all we know is there are 5 offsprings and all of them are unaffected. So these are some of the symbols which are extensively used in pedigree analysis. Now using this, it helps because now what you can do is you can do a research on various data, because you can get the data from different people, right? So you can actually start preparing a lot of pedigrees and then you can analyze, okay, what kind of kids can be born in this family for this particular couple. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.